I'm going to close the door really quick and then get on it. Okay. So something happened today. I was in one of my Facebook groups. It's called Unlearning Racism, and it's a place where it's run and operated and dominated by, I don't mean dominating like a bad, I just mean properly like vetted and authentic run Facebook group. And it's called Unlearning Racism. It's run by one of the a moderator that I've seen in Facebook a lot doing this kind of work. And one of the benefits of it is that when white people join, they are told, you have to engage. There's no option to not engage. You can't just lurk. You can't just like statuses and posts. You have to engage in some way. You got to ask questions. You got to compensate people for their labor. And one of the things that I really like about it is when you engage, or if you don't engage, you're expected to compensate any person of color or non-black POC or any non-white person on their labor. They'll provide their PayPal link or Venmo or whatever, and you can directly pay them some amount of dollars or something for the labor that they have expended on you. And there was a post that was deleted, and I understand why it was deleted, because it was posted by a white person that said she was asking for input on how to approach her family when they do something racist. She was looking for like tips because she hasn't really confronted people before. So I understand that fear of confrontation is something a lot of people have, and a lot of women have, a lot of people within families have, because families are very hard. Families can be really hierarchical. A lot of oppression within family members, or just straight up, gaslighting, maybe emotional abuse and stuff. So it always makes everything that they approach really hard already. But the post was removed because several white people said, well, don't do it online. Don't confront them online or Facebook. It's better to do in person, or just do it in private because they'll get defensive or lose face. And that comment came first before everything else. And it's really disappointing that it did, because it didn't really go into any nuance about like techniques or like the reality of what's going to start happening for you, why you should be doing any of it, whether, and it left out some things. So I added a comment. I made several more comments afterward, and eventually a non-white person came into the posts and the threads basically saying, white people don't say things like only handle it in private, because that is a immense privilege, and it also doesn't really show anybody anything, because they can manipulate you, or they'll be gaslit and all this stuff. And they're right. But I wanted to share what I had said and what I've been thinking about, because I've had a lot of experience with confronting people about their racism in person, among family, among friends, among strangers, online, or in forums or something, and internally within myself, for my own education, and very gracious people around me who are willing to say things to me and be direct with me. And so I always tell people that I'm a safe person to come and tell, hey, you did something wrong, or don't do this, or you're messing up, or whatever. I think that's important too, to remind people that you are going to be racist at some point. I'm going to be racist at some point, or I'm going to be insensitive, or I'm going to mess something up. And I want to be told that. White people have a whole lot to make up for, and it's the default position to be a white supremacist. And even if you don't think you are, don't know that you are. You just don't see it yet, until you really start learning and unlearning things. So it's Unlearning Racism 101. Anyway, here's the comment that I made. So I've done a lot of work with white people, and there's a lot of strategies. I'm okay with losing friends over racism, and I have. There are a lot who don't like me. So if you're starting to confront people, very quickly you're going to have to be comfortable or willing to be unliked. It's not possible to please everyone, and you'll be called fake woke, a white savior, holier than thou, an SJW. Because not enough of their lives are filled with anti-racism, they don't know what it's supposed to look like. If you can keep the relationship, you can start being the example they need to see. Sometimes you can approach someone in a private message like, oh, I know you probably didn't mean this in this way, but this is how it's hurtful, and I know you never want to hurt somebody else, and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes if you want to establish a long-term conversation with someone who will be extremely defensive, flattery and consolation work really well. But it's easy to lose yourself in that and lose your edge in confronting them on the racism. The engagement I usually do publicly is one where the racism and denial are so palpable that it needs to be forced into the spotlight. I know as a white person exactly how racism is embedded in us, so I know all the excuses and all the internal ways white people stay in denial. And I know what code words mean. So it's easy sometimes for non-white people to not readily interpret what is racist when you as a white person know intimately what another white person is really saying. Don't be afraid of confrontation when you're standing alone. And yes, it should usually be done, be a private confrontation. Losing face in front of others makes people really defensive. But it's also important for you to speak up in public as well. Actually, it is very important. Some people need harsher approaches because they have coasted by on civility and react horribly when it doesn't work anymore. That's actually fine because their racism is now exposed. They will eventually have to wrestle with that on their own. You don't succeed right away. You may never witness a positive result, but standing up for what's right every time does add to the anti-racism because it solidifies it for everyone else. You'll have an audience who watches and learns without them ever telling you. I also said, and this is from personal experience as well. In other words, this isn't stuff that I invented by myself. This isn't something that I read a book once and was like, I'll just follow the book instructions. No. You should also try to get consent on some confrontations on behalf of a non-white person, or at least try to calculate whether your teaching or confrontation could possibly harm the non-white person you're trying to defend. Sometimes those we think are good people start taking out their anger on people of color in secret, and it backfires on the non-white person. Literally seen this happen recently. Actually, more than once. So, more than once recently. It's what happens when somebody gets challenged on their racism or some racism thing comes out and suddenly it backfires for them, but then they try to make it also backfire on the person they're trying to hurt. And those people are lost causes. You can't even reach people like that. They're so self-absorbed about everything, and the racism makes it so much worse. And then I said, one more thing, some white people will defer to black people on phrases and intentions and perform a gracious attitude toward them. But if you repeat the same thing as a white person, they say, non-white person said, they'll get angry with you and lash out. This is how they reveal themselves to be racist. They know to pretend to listen to black folks and then react truthfully to a white person. Ultimately, you're going to have to make choices, set clear boundaries, and keep them. You're working to protect and advocate for non-white people, not make your white racist friends like you. Sometimes you can be private about it in a deeper way, be much more blunt, or use your relationship to try to move the needle. But with how deeply embedded racism is, you have to be willing to inflict some pain. Don't cater to their demands of civility or friendliness, and don't let them force you to change your tone or when you approach them. You will lose connections doing this, which is a perfectly fine risk to take because black people have no privilege in the space like that. You got to be able to spot the fakers and the narcissists, the lost causes, and etc. And then here's the comment from the first person who was not white, I believe, to respond. Which I tried to click on their PayPal, but then it was a bad link or something. It didn't work. She says, you got to be like Dr. Seuss. All the places you'll call out, here, there, everywhere. Calling in can lead to gaslighting. Public is better. There's no perfect way to call out people. She says, honestly, this question should have been presented to non-people of white. Some of these folks up threads suggesting variations of Tell Them Gently needs to unpack that. Racism is violent, whether in person or on social media, casual or overt. Y'all need to unpack that. Black and other POC suggestions should be the only ones you take. And the original poster responds to that and says she realized her mistake. She should have put that she only wanted people of color responses only. Again, the person of color says, when you get that kind of advice from people who are white, it's in y'all's nature to protect each other, so you tend to not do a good job at rectifying this destructive behavior. People of whites' feelings on how they're told they're perpetrating and normalizing violence is irrelevant. Hurt feelings doesn't trump POC lives. That is more correct than what I had said. There are still tactics to use if you're trying to talk with somebody, but absolutely tell them, like, this is not about you, don't center your feelings. Like, I've had to literally say that to somebody before, or multiple people before. Like, this is not about centering your feelings. You don't get to center your feelings in this conflict as a white person. It's not about, your feelings are irrelevant. You did this racist thing. You did a racist thing. And you have to stay firm with that. You can't detract from that by saying, I don't know. When they try to weasel out of it, they try to squeeze themselves out of it, they try to say, well, I didn't mean it that way. It kind of depends on the person and how you're going to approach that exactly, because if you think there's someone that you know well enough that would understand once you explain more about it, sometimes that works. I've had that happen before, where I would say, this is a racist thing, this feeds into racism, here's this history on it, or here's a brief thing about it. And try to keep it really brief, because people don't like reading essays anyway. Just be brief about it. Don't add a bunch of other language to it. Just try to be as direct as possible, because they can hide a lot better the more talking that you do. So, for example, they might say, well, you know what, this is giving me a headache. This is too much at once. I just can't handle it. Not that you're trying to save their feelings. It's not really about saving their feelings or protecting them. It's what kind of long-term influence do you want to have, and what do you want them to get out of your conversation with them, or confrontation in that moment. The first thing that they should understand with you is that you're completely intolerant of any ignorant racism, in addition to like overt racism, as in, I am racist, and I am racist, and here's how I am racist. And usually conversations like that end up with one of the other person, defriending each other. And that's fine, but then there's too much of white people defriending people, cutting them out of their life, without having done any effort whatsoever in moving that needle to a different direction, or enforcing a boundary. And instead of enforcing a boundary, they just avoid them. That's not great either. You can be confrontational with somebody and appeal to their emotions and not compromise what you're saying. It takes practice, I think, because again, white people are like, oh, I don't want to hurt somebody, I don't think they're trying to hurt somebody. So it just depends, like, you have to know where you are, and you got to be willing to inflict some pain on them, because they won't learn. And that's the most gentle you could be, and it's still, to them, not gentle. To them, it's still a deep wound. And they'll tell you that. They'll show you that. They'll show that, oh, you hurt me. Or they won't say it so blatantly, but they'll act like they were hurt personally. Like this was something that was so damaging to them. Like one time I went online. I didn't know that my mom would ever see this, so I didn't even think about it. But I have confronted her in person as well. Um, I was recalling a story that my mom said about something, and she lied about saying it. Um, and she said, this is back when Obama was first elected, I told people that my mom said once Obama was elected, that all the black people would start pushing all the white people off sidewalks. Because to her, a black person winning was a threat to her. She imagined that they would be getting revenge on white people. And I told that story to other people to show, hey, I was raised by somebody like this, or my mom said this stuff, and I still challenged her on it. Somehow she found the comment and said, I never said that in my life. I can't believe you're telling people I'm a racist online. I can't believe that. And I had to talk to her later and say, you did say this. You 100% said this. And she kept denying it. I don't really interact with her that much. There's no, I've had lots of talks with her. So she just shuts down. So, I've done what I can every time it comes up, or even times when it doesn't come up. Like I remind her, this is what I'm doing. I am doing this because of people like you. I have disowned a hell of a lot of people because of this. And I'm not saying that because I feel sorry for myself or anything. I don't. I just want to remind people, like, this is the kind of decision stuff that you'll have to make. You'll have to really decide who you want in your life and who you'll tolerate. And it's not easy. So the reason I say all that is because I want white people to know you're going to feel bad. The initial, phase is going to feel awful to you because it's not something you're used to doing. You're not used to confronting white people in this way. It doesn't feel good at first. At first, it feels like I'm just being not intolerant. I'm just being belligerent. I'm just attacking people, for things that they can't control or something. And then obviously they can control it. You can't take advantage of their ignorance. You can't just have benefit of the doubt anymore. And that's something that you learn over time with more practice of how you're confronting people, what you internally will allow, and the more you allow, the worse you are at it, and you're not really an ally at all. You're not an advocate. You just do it when it's comfortable, or when you know that you can win. As in, convince that person that they're racist or something, or that they need to change. And that's another thing about it. It's very easy to get caught up in the ego, in their personal ego. If you think you can win people over all the time, so that's why you spend a lot of time on essays, you talk a long time with people, you keep talking with them. There's an ego to that where really all it does is show that you're willing to put this energy in appearing civil and educational, but in effect doing nothing. Because you're not really making a decision. You're not setting a real boundary. You're just performing being a teacher. But you haven't really done anything. Or you're only doing it in private where nobody can see the evolution of yourself and nobody can see what they are saying in response. Sometimes, very often actually, if I'm talking with someone in private and they start saying even worse things, I'll screenshot everything. I screenshot everything as soon as I get a whiff of suspicion or anything. I start screenshotting immediately, and I keep screenshotting. And usually it goes on until they block me or something. And And then I share everything. I share it all. I snitch on them because I want people to know what they do in private. And it has to be something pretty significant for me to throw something out there for everybody else to judge. And white people do not like doing that. So you have to work through that uncomfortable feeling where, we've been taught for so long, like, don't air people's dirty laundry. Don't talk about racism and say someone's racist because you, quote, don't know what they're really thinking. Like, no, I know exactly what they're thinking. If you've really unpacked this stuff and you're still working on unpacking it, like myself, you can see all the ways that they are trying to hide. And it's not good enough to just arbitrarily or randomly say, hey, this thing was kind of hurtful. Can you not do that? And they go, okay, I won't do that again. But they don't understand. Because it's not really about a one-off racist comment. They are perpetuating white supremacy, just like you would be doing, or just like I would be doing if I did nothing all the time. So that's what that's about. You gotta confront all of it. There are ways you can do that where if you know who they are, kind of, you could frame it in a way of like, here's how I'm helping you. And you could also say, I'm also doing this too. So you, the person you're speaking to, you can help me too. Like you can call me out. We can call each other out. We can kind of help fix things internally with each other as well, and not be making it. It's kind of like you're telling them, insinuating like, here's how you can be anti-racist and still be safe, because it's something that white people really, really are terrified of. And there's a reason I mentioned, try to calculate whether what you're saying to them is going to backfire on a non-white person. Like communication, teaching, depends on the person. Like knowing your audience a little bit. And again, that just takes practice. Like you have to call it out everywhere, and you're not ever going to know exactly how to do it each time. And the more experiences you get, the more examples that you see yourself, or more courage that you get getting to do it, the better it'll be and more effective it'll be. If you think that you are immune from criticism or being called out, just admit it. Just say that. Remind people sometimes, like, this is something all white people need to be doing about everything. And it's not about guilt. It's about justice. It's about, do we want to do the right thing, or do we want to just stay silent about it? And my demand that I have on my peers and my friends is that they're going to be doing that too. I don't tolerate or have friends with people who refuse to do that, or who make excuses without me calling them out on it. Sometimes it'll come up really randomly. You got to be ready. It's like, do I want to confront this right this second? Or do I need to take it privately so that they will hear what I'm saying? But it's extremely important to be confrontational about it. Even if it makes you a pariah, if it makes you an outcast, if it gets you blocked, if it gets you angry calls from your mother or from, anybody, you have to be able to stand your ground. And that's going to be hard. But none of that compares to being non-white in America, and especially right now. It does not compare at all. Non-white people don't have the privilege of being able to be seen and go, I don't know if that person's a Trump supporter or not. Like, usually, you're going to assume that they're not. With white people, you don't know that. Not right away. That is a privilege that we have. We have the benefit of the doubt taken for us all the time. So it's a really, really, really hard thing to balance and learn or unlearn how to not enable that privilege. Still being able to call somebody out and be very blunt about it, set very clear boundaries, like, what you said to my friend is unacceptable or even unforgivable. You should never say this. This is a racist thing. If they ask you questions about it, you can be truthful and still keep the same message. Like, one of the things I learned for getting into city hall meetings, town hall meetings, when you have a concept, you have like a little essay, you want something to say to the city council to convince them or persuade them to do something different than what they're doing, which almost never works. But you should have prepared in your statement uh, 3 repeats of the main topic that you're discussing. Like, what the thing I want you to do is blank. Be ready to say that multiple times in a conversation so that it's not just they think that you're just simply attacking them and there's no reason or rhyme to it. Sometimes they'll think, oh my gosh, you're just attacking anybody. You're just attacking everybody. And yes, all of that is racist. All of what they're doing is racist. All of it. It is white supremacy in action. It is white supremacy they are trying to protect. And you've got to be able to know if you are enabling white supremacy or if you're just treading the steps that they had just taken, but then turning them in a different direction. Like, if you know somebody is hurt and they're centering their feelings, tell them, right now you're centering your feelings instead of solving this problem or admitting this problem or whatever. You can't let them get away with it because nobody else is going to do that. And what I've also seen, and again, one of the comments I mentioned, is that white people will pretend to be this way around, say, black people or activist organizers. But then with a white person, they reveal who they really are. And it's very telling when that happens because if they felt safe to say that to me in private, they should not be in that work because they're not doing it for the right reasons or their direct actions they're taking are going to backfire. And it's going to fall on somebody else or it's going to hurt somebody else. So again, I'll snitch on anybody. I will, tell people, hey, this person's a problem, an actual problem. Not just don't just share random racist comments. like you would never go to like your black friend and be like, oh my gosh, do you want to see this racist thing that my mom said? Like, don't do that. Like, don't bring trauma to somebody. Don't remind them. Don't be like, don't show off, and try to show off how, non-racist you're being by comparing yourself to somebody else. And it's hard to balance that too because you could still be accused of that because you might be a really bad communicator or you're doing that thing and then you have to go, I see that I'm doing that and that's something that I need to change, need to unpack. So if someone is gracious enough to tell you that you're doing something wrong, that's another thing you have to learn is to be able to take that and go, I cannot center my feelings about this. It cannot be, I have to be willing to learn. If someone tells me, hey, this is how this is problematic, there is no credit that you can earn as a white person that gives you the ability to say, well, I don't have to listen to you. There's no amount of credit or clout or reputation that, should inform you that you get to say that to somebody. White people will tell each other that all day long. Like, you don't get to tell me this because you did this. Or you should change your tone with me because you're not being good things. Like, you have to ignore all that. Again, the 3 times that you repeat a topic or a concept, like, just repeat those things. Stick by what you said. And honestly, that's just about being able to convince people. If you just want to have it out and have a brawl with somebody because they're being racist and you know how explicit that is or you know what they're doing, all their tricks are and stuff, I'm not saying don't have it out with them. I'm not saying like, oh, you can't be mean. I don't mean that at all. Or don't do it because you're going to ruin your relationship. Like I'm saying, you are going to ruin the relationship. They are going to ruin their relationship with you because they can't handle a white person that they're supposed to feel safe with telling them you're doing this incredibly wrong thing. You're being racist. You are racist. You said a racist thing. You need to unpack that. They will accuse you of all kinds of shit. They'll accuse you of being an instigator, agitator, fake, or like you just want to control everybody else, or you're, something. And and so it all depends on the person. I've had very good conversations before with people where I was able to get through to them, being as blunt as I could be, and also reminding them, I'm doing this too, or I've had to learn, or here's a place where you have to reach them in some way. Because if you just say, wow, you're racist, which is valid, true thing to say, and they don't respond, or they are like, don't even, sometimes they might just ask why. And you got to be blunt about it. And they go, well, I didn't know that was racist. Like, well, it doesn't matter if you didn't know. That's not an excuse. You have to just keep at it. It's like teaching children. Like, you don't let them give the excuse. Like, you say, I see that you feel that way, but this is how we do things. This is the boundary, etc. It wouldn't really be appropriate to say, I don't know, I've never seen you be racist before. Like, you would have to think about this person. Again, someone you know. Think back on this thing. Think back on your life with them and your experiences. Don't try to make it something like, you weren't racist before until now. Like, you weren't racist until Trump was elected or something. Because that's giving them a really big out. That's giving them a back door that they don't need, and you don't need to make one for them like that. Anyway, I was just thinking a whole lot about it. And it's much more important to confront them than not. Always do it. You do not have to be perfect at it. I'm just sharing things that have happened, whether they are successful or not successful. It's still the right thing to do, and then sometimes not the right thing to do, such as don't bring trauma to people, that nobody needs to know about. Oh my God, my high school friend from blah 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 said this, and isn't that just crazy? Like, just and if you're one more thing. One of the reasons you got to be careful about how you approach, or when you choose to out somebody or be really public about it, like a public feud going on. It may not be a feud you thought you would be having, but they started. Be careful about that, because if you're working with any organizers or activist groups, their stability and their reputation is more important than the infighting amongst white people. So, and this is something that I've learned, that I've been told, not something I invented on my own to protect white people. It's just, sometimes it matters how you approach a problem in public, because it can make your organization, the one that they are in or you're in, that is run or managed by people of color, it can make that organization look like it's not well stitched together. It can make it look like it's too chaotic, or there's too much infighting, and then what they need is a clear message. Every engagement, every interaction they have is the clear message of, we are blank, our goal is blank. And if that can be detracted from when people go public and like, oh my God, this person's organization said something really racist, and you don't go to the other organizers first. Always try to get some kind of feedback if it's going to be something that could, blow up on social media. Go to the people who will be affected by it first. Because that's not really snitching. That's more, you know, bringing something to their attention and then seeing how they want to deal with it. You know what I mean? That is safer to do. It is more appropriate to do. Sometimes. Not every time. Sometimes what I've done is I've done that where I've gone very public about it and I'm like, oh my god, this person said this to me in private. They said this about this group that we're part of, and wow, this was shitty. And it's legitimately shitty and trashy and everything. But then I had to be reined back in by the very group I was talking about because that's not what they wanted. So you had to learn that it's not about getting everything out there as much as you possibly can. It's also about, do you have the, is it effective, is it necessary, and will it affect somebody other than you? That has to be considered as well. And you need to tell white people straight up, you don't need to center your feelings about this. And you have to remind yourself of that too. Okay, I think that's it for now.